Hi, welcome to my channel, America Teacher 5th grade, where we learn all things concerning 5th grade. Today we are learning about some more American history, and we are currently in Unit 3, Chapter 6. We're going to be learning about the Middle Colonies. We've already talked about geography of the land and the Native Americans and how they were here, and the explorers, and some of the other Europeans, and now we are focused on the English colonies. And so we're going to learn more about the 13 original colonies. Before we start, I just kind of want you to notice that I have my my little projector, if you will, I don't know, focused at a different angle, and I don't know why I didn't do this first. Before, it was always kind of off to this side, and I don't know, so I'm hoping that this is a little bit better. Sometimes we just kind of need to twist our perspective a little bit also to help me see a little bit clearer. I might have these reading glasses. I even though I want to pretend I'm young and all this, my eyes are much older than the rest of me, and I just kind of want to share this little chain that I have holding on my reading glasses. And it's from the Native American Fund. They sent it to me in the mail because I do support them, and I just, I don't know when you're going to see this. This could be 50 years from now. Anyways, they're just out there. I just wanted to say thank you to them for providing me one of these. I always kind of wanted one, but I was like, no, I'm not going to spend my money on that. But they sent it to me in the mail. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And here we go. Study skills. Question and answer relationships. Before, we were talking about how a KWL chart, what we know, what we want to know, what we have learned when we're done. And right now we're just going to talk about some questions. So it says different questions need different kinds of answers. Knowing this can help you write better answers, because you can answer, and remember, we are also working on answering incomplete sentences, whether you are saying it out loud orally or whether you are writing them down. So it says questions with words who, what, when, and where are often ask you to give details. So questions with the words how and why often ask you to compare topics or give causes and effects. This requires you to make connections, and that's what this is really all about, just kind of giving you some more background knowledge, increasing your schema. That's a fun word for basically background knowledge, and just kind of building on that. So that's why I'm doing this, just to give you some more. So questions about details and questions about connections. So a question about a detail would be, who was William Penn? And the answer was, like how it starts, answer, William Penn was the founder of Pennsylvania. Okay, that's a pretty basic, direct. We don't have to think too hard to find that. That's kind of what we would call a lower level question, or a depth of knowledge question. Those are the educational terms that we're using currently right now. They keep switching them up, like schema. It's background knowledge. But, those are what we call buzzwords, and things that we need to know about. And maybe they'll just go back to what they were before. But let's try a question about connections. How was William Penn's colony different from Massachusetts? And so if you think about the word Penn, guess what? Pennsylvania? Yeah, that's where it comes from. So it says Pennsylvania had people of different religions. Most of the people in Massachusetts shared the same religion. So again, most people in Massachusetts, they all had the same beliefs. And then whereas the people in Pennsylvania had many different religious beliefs, and yet they were still able to work together and live together, whereas the people in Massachusetts were kicking each other out. And sometimes I feel like we kind of do that today. Oh, you don't think exactly like how I do. I don't want you to be my friend on my social media site or something like that, when really we should be inclusive of many different ideas and more like William Penn. So preview vocabulary. It says trial by jury, immigrant, and artesian. And you might say also artisan. That could be another way to pronounce it, but usually we kind of go artesian, even though artisan is a little bit more phonetic. I spent a lot of time on these 2 pages and we didn't cover much, but I'll try to go a little bit quicker for you. All right. I'm going to slide this down just a little bit, and here's our timeline for lesson 1. In 1647, Peter Stuyvesant arrives in New Netherland. In 1664, England takes over New Netherland and renames it New York. So that's where we got the name New York. It used to be New Netherland. Names change. And in 1681, William Penn founds the colony of Pennsylvania. And since I'm reading these little ones, I'm going to go ahead and put my glasses. They're a little bit funky looking, but if you need to wear them, wear them. I have to admit, I wore them a lot when I was a kid, so I am a little vain. I'm still wearing contacts so I can see, and now I have to still wear reading glasses on top of my contacts. It's a little crazy for me. What to know? Why did people from different places and backgrounds settle in the Middle Colonies? So I want you to be thinking about that the whole time I'm reading or you are reading. Vocabulary. Refuge will be found on page 228. It's not on this page, so we'll be reading it in context when we get to it. Proprietor, that's a big word. Let's clap that one out. Proprietor. So that E kind of has its own little syllable and sound all to itself. Next, trial by jury. Justice. Important people to know during this lesson is King Charles II. And let's see if I can pronounce his name. Peter Stuyvesant. Or Stuyvesant. I'm going to go with Stuyvesant. William Penn. And Tamanend. Important places are New York, New Jersey, New York City, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. And again, our focus skill is on summarizing, whether it's having specific details, and then just kind of come up with, ideally one sentence or a complex sentence, at least a compound one, or 2 simple sentences. Let's go ahead and look at the picture real quick. Fort Orange, built near where Albany, New York now stands. The fort was right beside the Hudson River. So look at that. You can see how close it was, probably less than a block away. And there it is. I don't think they worried about flooding back then until maybe it was too late. But so there's the fort, Fort Orange. Here we go. I don't know if it looked orange. I wonder if it was named after somebody. All right, settling the Middle Colonies. You are there. That's our second person point of view. It says the year is 1660. King Charles II is pleased with his American colonies. In the north, New England produces large amounts of lumber. In the south, Virginia's tobacco plantations are bringing him great wealth. The king points to a map. The problem lies here, right in the middle. He tells you that Dutch colony is in the way. So he has all of these English colonies, and there's a Dutch colony right in the way. And this is what King Charles II looks like. I'm guessing that is a wig. But kind of look at all those puffy sleeves, lots of material in all of that. This is what we call a scepter that he's holding. It kind of has like a little jeweled cross up on top. Sash, this looks like it may have been on his coronation day, only he's not wearing his crown for it. Perhaps it was a little too much. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and read this first column and up to there, and then I'll move it. But here, I'll just go ahead and slide it up now. We already saw the picture. Okay, the breadbasket colonies. While the Puritans were settling New England, other groups were setting up colonies directly to the south. This region included what are today the states of New York, New Jersey, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. So although they're south of the New England colonies, everything is south of them. And so these are still the middle ones. These colonies became known as the Middle Colonies. The region got its name because of its location between the New England colonies and the southern colonies. Geography and climate. When Europeans arrived in the Middle Colonies, they saw flat plains and rolling hills. There were also grassy meadows and thick forests. Settlers found that when this land was cleared, it was much better for farming than the land of New England. Settlers also learned that the climate was good for growing crops. The summers were long, and the amount of rain each year was good for crops, such as wheat, corn, and rye. The Middle Colonies grew so many crops used in making bread that they came to be called the breadbasket colonies. We have cornbread and regular wheat bread and rye bread. Things. In addition to rich land, the region had several large harbors along the Atlantic Ocean. Settlers found that these harbors were connected to many of the region's rivers, such as the Hudson and Delaware rivers. These rivers stretched far inland. Settlers knew that these deep waterways would let large ships travel inland, making trade with other colonies easier. All of these special features attracted many different settlers to the region. And reading Ch6, summarize. What attracted settlers to the Middle Colonies? So can you think about that? Settlers were attracted to the Middle Colonies because of it. You could be very simplistic, geography and climate, or you could say the geography and climate of the Middle Colonies attracted settlers. That would be another way to say that. I'm going to pause this for just a moment. I'm sorry, it is summer while I'm recording this, and it's warm and I have a fan on, but it seems to be interfering. So if you want to go ahead and take a picture, I'm going to pause this. Okay, I'm back. It was just as well I needed to kind of readjust. Let's look at the pictures first before we start reading. This right here really kind of breaks my heart. Up above, it says slave auction. The first slave auction in New Amsterdam was held in 1655. So I don't know about there. That's when, you just kind of put up a person and treat them like they were a piece of cattle or furniture, and it was certainly not right. I want again to point out the date, 1655. We were not our own country back then, although it did still continue after we were. And next we have Peter Stuyvesant left New Netherland after the English took over the colony, but he later returned and lived in New York when they changed the name to New York. So Peter Stuyvesant, we'll find out what he was like. Why would he leave? Apparently he was Dutch, and but then still came back because he was attracted to it. All right, our heading, New Netherland grows, and I am going to put on my reading glasses. The Dutch still controlled New Netherland, which included the Hudson Valley. However, few Dutch people came to the colony. Their country, the Netherlands, was prosperous. It gave its citizens many freedoms, and people saw no reason to leave. By 1640, only about 2,000 people lived in the colony. These settlers had problems with both Native Americans and nearby English colonists. I wonder what did inspire them to. Maybe they were just more traders. A new leader. The Dutch West India Company controlled New Netherland. It decided that a new leader was needed to raise the colony's profits and bring order. In 1647, the company sent Peter Stuyvesant. Oh, here we go. Is it? Oh, Stuyvesant. Stuyvesant. Okay, good thing we have that there to help us out. Peter Stuyvesant to govern the colony. In the 1650s, Stuyvesant expanded New Netherland into what is now New Jersey. Then he pushed south into what is now Delaware, taking over the small colony of New Sweden in 1655. So within 8 years, he's taking over other colonies and putting that. So apparently Delaware started off as a little Swedish colony, or Swiss. New Netherland now controlled more land, but it still needed more colonists. It did not have enough people to be successful. So isn't that interesting? We do need to group together to help protect each other. New colonists. To increase New Netherlands' population, the Dutch West India Company let people from Belgium, Denmark, France, Italy, Spain, and Brazil settle in the colony. So they decided to think outside the box, or at least outside their country, and invite anybody and everybody. And I do believe that this is where the start of the Great American Melting Pot began, with the Dutch. So thank you, Dutch, for that. The new settlers included one of the first groups of Jewish people to move to North America, all the way back in the 1650s. Now, what would be interesting, and I'm not going to do it right now, but you might want to later research what was going on in Europe, or even Russia, to possibly that would make the Jews want to move to North America, to a very small little settlement. Africans also lived in New Netherland. Most had been captured and brought to the colony as enslaved workers, beginning in 1626. So this says 1626. I know some people say in 1619. There may have been slaves in Jamestown, but it's possible that they were just indentured servants. And so we're going to kind of, I guess, stick with that, and or maybe that this is just in New Netherland and that was an English colony, and now this is a Dutch colony. So in 1626, yet not all Africans in New Netherland were enslaved. Some had been able to buy their freedom. However, they were not completely free. Each year they had to pay their employers in money or goods to remain free. Oh my. How would that be? I don't know. Some people say that might feel like taxes. All right, I'm going to push this up all the way, since we already looked at the pictures, and you can take your own new screenshot for this section if you would like to read this on your own. In 1660s, Stuyvesant gave land on Manhattan to about 40 formerly enslaved people. The land became New Netherland's first community of free Africans. Well, that's encouraging. Good to hear that. And reading check. Summarize. Why did few people from the Netherlands settle in New Netherland? And if I were to do that, I would say, well, back in paragraph 1, and I don't know if you can see, it says the page, but it would be on page 226. And I would say on page 226, paragraph 1, few people came to the New Netherlands because their home country was pretty great. I don't know. Here we go. It's already doing well. The English take over. King Charles II wanted England to control the Atlantic coast of North America. He wanted more settlements, more lands, rich in natural resources, and control of the fur trade. Sounds rather greedy and power-hungry. One thing prevented the king from meeting this goal: the colony of New Netherland. Conflicts over land. Both the English and the Dutch claimed lands in the Connecticut Valley and on Long Island. King Charles II gave his brother James, the Duke of York, the land between Maine and the Delaware River, including New Netherland. So he just kind of said, this is yours if you can keep it, if you can take it away from the Dutch. In 1664, the Duke of New York sent 4 warships to take New Netherland. When the ships arrived off the coast of the colony, the English told Stuyvesant to give up. They said that if he did not, they would attack. Stuyvesant wanted to fight the English and keep New Netherland. He tried to get the colonists to fight, but they would not. They knew they were outnumbered. New Netherland had fewer than 150 soldiers. Stuyvesant surrendered, and the English took control of New Netherland without firing a shot. And it might have been that maybe Stuyvesant was not nearly as popular or as kind. Maybe he wasn't a very good leader. This just says, oh, they didn't have enough people. But they were just like, hey, you take him out. We'll keep working here. We'll provide goods or whatever, or pay taxes. Instead of paying taxes to the Netherlands, we'll just pay taxes to England, and we're fine. So, reading check. Summary. Why did England want to control New Netherland? Well, they just didn't want anybody in the way. All right, I'm gonna scroll this down. If you want to let's look at the pictures. I'm gonna slide it all the way down. Founding the Middle Colonies. So this one starts in 1650, 1675, 1700. So in years of 25 years, kind of in between. Notice whatever you choose to use, whether it's 25 years, 50 years, 100 years, it needs to be consistent all along the way, and that this space needs to be the same. So this green dot right here, which I guess happened first, 1664, the New York colony is established officially in 1664. Also in 1664, just a little bit later, the New Jersey colony is established. And I don't know if it was officially New York. It might have been New Netherland. I don't know if maybe they misspoke a little bit too soon. And in 1681, the Pennsylvania colony is founded by William Penn. So let's read a little bit more about that. The timeline. All of the Middle Colonies were founded in the 1600s. In what century were they founded? Well, it kind of tells you that. They were founded in the 1600s. Or do we say that's the 15th century, because this right up here, when it's hit 17, so when you are officially 1 year old, now you can say, well, I'm in my first year, but it's not. So from here on, you're like in the, so this is actually the 15th century, and when we get to 1700, now we can say, oh wow, we're in the 16th. So it's sort of like right now I'm recording this in the year 2024, and yet we say we are in the 21st century. So so does that mean we're actually in the 17th century? So 1600s. There we go. All right. So we kind of go up. So we're in the 1700s. Okay. All right, let's check out our map. The Middle Colonies location. What Pennsylvania city was on the Delaware River? So let's check this out. Here's, oh, this is called the Susquehanna. Isn't that a mouthful? Susquehanna River, and let's find the Delaware River, and it looks like either Philadelphia, maybe Wilmington, but it looks like Philadelphia is right on the Delaware River. So, because they're talking about Pennsylvania, not Delaware or New Jersey. And go. So here's what is now New Hampshire. This was now Vermont, but it was claimed by New York and New Hampshire. So that finally they're like, no, we belong to ourselves. Here's Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New Jersey. So Pennsylvania, most of this area, most of New York, and Vermont. Present-day borders, and the Mohawks were the Native American tribes. There are lots of them. So the Mohawks were in New York, along with the Oneida, the Onondaga, the Cayuga, and the Seneca. Now, I heard of Seneca apples, and I do know that New York grows a lot of apples, and they also grow up here along the lakes. There's a lot of grapes for wine. But when I heard of Seneca, I think, because I'm from the West, I just kind of think all apples come from the state of Washington. But I guess Seneca apples come from New York. Maybe you've heard of like Seneca apple juice and that brand. Here's the Lenape. They're here in New Jersey. The Connecticut River cuts right through the state of Connecticut. All right. I'm going to push this up. I don't know if we're going to be able to do all of it. You might want to do a picture here, and then I'll slide it back down when I'm reading over there, but for you. Here we go, New York and New Jersey. James, the Duke of York, split the Dutch colony into two parts. He named them New York and New Jersey. James kept New York for himself, and the city of New Amsterdam became New York City. James gave New Jersey to two of his friends, John Berkeley and George Carteret. And this is why people became friends with royalty, because I'm just going to give you a huge piece of land the size of a state. I don't know. The English treated the Dutch settlers fairly. They promised to protect their rights, religious freedoms, and property. They also let the colonists elect some of their own leaders. Most Dutch settlers chose to stay. Why wouldn't you? Here you go, if you get to keep all of the rights that you currently enjoy. At first, nearly all the colonists lived in New York. To attract more settlers to New Jersey, Berkeley and Carteret offered to sell land at low prices. Many of the early settlers arriving in New Jersey were members of the Society of Friends, a religious group also known as the Quakers. So here's our subheading so we can learn more about the Quakers. Quakers believed that all people were equal. They refused to fight in wars or to swear loyalty to any king or country. People with different beliefs were often cruel to the Quakers. Thousands of Quakers were forced to leave England. So again, they came over because of religious persecution, especially in England, where everybody's like, you need to belong to the Church of England and swear loyalty to its country. So the Quakers hoped to find a refuge, that's one of our vocabulary words, or a safe place to live and worship. So that's a refuge, a safe place. So maybe you've heard of like a wildlife refuge where it's a safe place for animals. In 1674, a group of Quakers bought Berkeley's share of New Jersey and founded Salem, New Jersey, the first Quaker settlement in North America. Well, how would that be for Berkeley? He was like, well, I've got all this land, but does it do me any good here in England? No. So the Quakers gave him some cash, so I hope he spent it wisely. Go. Summarize. What did many Quakers settle, or why did many Quakers settle in New Jersey? Now, why is again one of our connection words. So we need to make, again, some connections to history and to the text. But you can say many Quakers settled in New Jersey because they were looking for a safe place to live and worship. Okay, I'm going to slide this down a little bit. Delaware. Oh, here we go. Sorry. Pennsylvania and Delaware. In 1681, King Charles II gave a charter to William Penn, an English Quaker. The charter made Penn the proprietor or owner of what is now Pennsylvania. So he's the owner, but he's still saying he's subject to King Charles. A new plan of government. Penn was given the land because the king owed money to Penn's father. Isn't that interesting? The new colony was named Pennsylvania, which means Penn's Woods. Sylvania, I guess that means woods. So when I hear of like Transylvania, the woods of whoever trans was. Here you go. Penn wanted all the people living in Pennsylvania, Quakers and non-Quakers, to live together peacefully. In 1682, Penn wrote the frame of government of Pennsylvania. The plan of government set up a legislature called the General Assembly. It also gave citizens freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and the right to a fair trial by jury. In a trial by jury, a group of citizens decides if a person is guilty or innocent of committing a crime. And so, again, that had never been done before, at least not in the colonies formally. And so that's really great that he was doing for them. And freedom of speech, freedom of religion, that's our First Amendment included in our Bill of Rights. And along with a right to a fair trial, that is also in our Bill of Rights. Penn later wrote the Pennsylvania Charter of Privileges, which allowed white male colonists to elect representatives to the assembly. And I know you're like, there's those free white men again. But again, these are rights that most ordinary men did not have in England. So, I know it seems unfair, but we have to kind of put on our history glasses when we're going back into time. Okay. The Duke of York gave Penn control of the land that now makes up Delaware in 1682. Penn gave the colony its own assembly in 1704. So, wow, he was given a lot of land. Relations with Native Americans. Penn also wanted Native Americans to be treated with justice or fairness. So that's great that we have, a little bit more of racial equality, even way back in the 1600s or 1700s. In a letter, he told the local Lenape people, I desire to enjoy it with your love and consent, that we may always live together as neighbors and friends. So definitely they were, and if we remember, these people also, the Native Americans, many of the Native American tribes, they weren't moving as much as like those did in the plains. They had like the long houses where, up to 30 to 50 people could live in some of those. So let's find out, let's see if the Native Americans agreed with that. So I'm excited to read about, learn more about Tamanend. American. Let's go ahead and check out the picture real quick. It says, William Penn learned to speak the Lenape language and treated the people fairly. Says Penn arrived in Pennsylvania in 1682. He met with Tamanend, the other Lenape leaders. He paid them for most of the land King Charles II had given him and built a long-lasting peace with these Native Americans. So that's great. So, and I feel like they must have felt like it was a fair price. Okay, and probably for as long as William Penn was alive, and hopefully his children. Says, how was Penn's treatment of the Native Americans related to Quaker beliefs? Remember, the Quakers were like, we don't want to fight, we don't want to go to war, and so they were willing to purchase the land, I believe, at a fair price. Summary. The Middle Colonies were New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. People from many different places and backgrounds settled in the Middle Colonies. Some settlers came because of the good land. Others came to freely practice their religion. Okay, I'm gonna pull this up as we look into our review, and I apologize, there is one more, let's see if we can get that up above, and so we know that this is about Tamanend. There's one more page after this, but it's a really interesting one about the court system and justice, which is a big deal currently, and I feel like it always has been. Review, what to know, that was at the very beginning. Why did people from different places and backgrounds settle in the Middle Colonies? Please talk to yourself in your head, say it out loud, or better yet, talk to a friend, parent, neighbor, sibling. Vocabulary. Use the term trial by jury in a sentence about the Pennsylvania colony. That would be a good one. See if you can tie it into at least 2 or 3 other vocabulary terms as well. Geography. How does location explain why New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware were called the Middle Colonies? Critical thinking. This is why we do this. Why do you think William Penn wanted religious freedom in Pennsylvania? Here's the fun part. Write a conversation. Write a conversation between William Penn and Tamanend. Have each leader describe their hopes for the future. And if you want to, and if there's somebody around, I would do that with a partner. You know, one of you take on the role of William Penn and one of you take on the role of Tamanend, and see if you can come to an agreement of what that conversation would have sounded like. Summarize. On a separate sheet of paper, copy and complete this graphic organizer. Key facts were the Dutch controlled New Netherlands. England wanted to expand its colonies. So how would you summarize those 2 key facts? I'm going to look at the timeline right here and then slide it down so you can see more. So Tamanend. In 1683, Tamanend first meets with William Penn, and in 1697, Tamanend attends his last meeting with Pennsylvania leaders. And so people are wondering, like, if he died shortly after that. I just kind of want you to look at like the beadwork on his clothes, and even down here, he's wearing a red sash, kind of like show his, if you think about like what the king wore, he wore a sash also to kind of show like, hey, I'm the leader and of England, and so he also has a sash to show his leadership for his tribe. We are focusing on respect for our character, why character counts. In what ways did Tamanend earn the respect of his people and of William Penn? Tamanend says, we will live in love with William Penn and his children as long as the creeks and rivers run. That's beautiful. No one was surprised to hear Tamanend speak these kind words. He was a kind leader and was respected by all who knew him. Tamanend grew up along the Neshaminy Creek in the forests of what is now southeastern Pennsylvania. He belonged to the Lenape tribe, which the English called the Delaware. In Tamanend's language, his name meant affable or friendly and easy to talk to. The name fit him well. One minister described Tamanend as having every good and noble qualification that a human being can possess. Makes me happy to hear. Tamanend met with Pennsylvania's colonial leaders 5 times over the years. In each meeting, he agreed to sell land. The colonists paid for the land with guns, clothing, tools, blankets, and other items. Tamanend divided these items equally among his tribe members. Not all colonial leaders were as fair as William Penn, yet Tamanend always worked to honor the peace he made between the Lenape and the people of Pennsylvania. And I think you kind of understood, as unfortunate as it was, it's probably was better to sell it than to fight and to lose lives in that way. Okay, our very last one, justice. If you want to, here, I'll try to move this so you can take a picture of it. I'll maybe there for that page, and I'll move it again right before we go. Justice. Any government is free to the people under it, where the laws rule and the people are a party to, can help make those laws. From the frame of government of Pennsylvania. And who wrote that? William Penn. So I believe that this is a statue of him. It says, in some colonies, people accused of a crime did not receive a trial by jury. And it was just kind of, whoever said, and, only the judge got to decide. And you hoped that he was a very fair judge. In his frame of government, William Penn wrote that all citizens of the Pennsylvania colony were to be treated equally under the law. This is the basic idea of justice in government. The idea of justice also appeared in the Pennsylvania Charter of Privileges in 1701. Penn knew that people are more likely to follow laws when they have a voice in making them. He believed that treating people justly was the key to good government. And that was also kind of the same, I believe, with the Mayflower Compact. All of those men agreed to those laws and signed their names to it. So it's a little bit more. And again, this is kind of what the first page looks like, the frame of government of the, I wonder if that's supposed to be Providence of Pennsylvania in America. Together with laws agreed upon in England by the governor, and underneath, you can't read it anymore, it says divers free men of the afore province. Okay, up here it says lawyers, judges, and juries work to make sure that people receive fair trials. This is what a more modern day court system would look at, with like the defendant and the, the prosecutor or the prosecution. Over here, this statue, it says the figure of justice wears a blindfold because the law is supposed to treat all people equally, no matter who they are. Doesn't matter like what family you came from, or how rich or how poor you are. It is supposed to be fair. And I'm going to slide this over and up so we don't see the picture anymore, but at least we can see this. So it says, one of the most important ways Penn promised a fair government was to give citizens the right to a trial by jury. At that time, very few places in the world gave people this right. In a trial by jury, a group of citizens, rather than a single person, decides if someone has broken the law. A trial by jury gives the power to make decisions about guilt and innocence to the people. Today, equal justice is an important idea in the United States government. The Bill of Rights says that no citizen can be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. This means that all people in the United States have the right to equal treatment under the law. And then down here it says, make it relevant. The Constitution, which includes the Bill of Rights, promises United States citizens the right to a fair and public trial by jury. Why do you think it is important for trials to be public? Can you think about that? Because if they're not public, and sometimes they'll have gag orders on people, oh, you can't talk about it, while it's in what they call litigation. But if we don't know what's going on, how do we know that it is right and fair and that justice is being served? I know sometimes they'll call that the court of popular opinion, and yet sometimes I feel like if it's not out there for people, to be upset about, then is it truly fair, even if it's by trial? So that's why today sometimes the news media is in there. Sometimes they're like, nope, not until after the fact, or they'll just tell them after. That is it for lesson 1. Thank you for sticking with me. You are so great. And if you are still here, I know you have the self-discipline you need to become self-reliant, have self-respect, and respect for others. You are learning so much. And I just think you are an amazing. Remember to be kind always and have a fabulous day.